Swift Kanban got started. So would you mind sharing just a little bit with me how it got started as a product?
Yeah, so at Digité as a company has been around since 2002. And in the early days of our existence, we were very focused on doing what our customers were telling us to do. And as luck would have it, because the founders came from, these large IT services companies out of India, we were sort of pulled in that direction of doing things that our customers in India were asking us for. And these companies typically do very large projects in a very traditional manner. So for the first 10 years or so, we were very focused on just regular waterfall type of project management, and our tools essentially reflected the capability to do so. And around 2009 or 10, we realized that we had sort of missed the agile bus a little bit. So we realized that we had to catch up very quickly. And one of the guys in my team, was one of the product managers, said, "Hey, instead of going after the whole Scrum and the sort of traditional agile, so to speak, there is something new called Kanban, and I think we should look at it." And so we started discussing Kanban internally. We started to do a little bit of study. And as luck would have it, right around that time, I was presenting at a conference for the SEPG group, which is run by the forgetting the name of the university now. And I was speaking there, and I ran into who else but David Anderson. So unlike all the other sessions, which were sort of half full, half empty, there was this room with a massive overflow of audience and an interesting voice coming from there, interesting accent. So I said I had to go peek in to see who was this person, and that is how I ran into David. And so very quickly, right after that, I also met him at the SCPG conference in Europe. This was in 2000, I'm pretty sure 2010. And we said, okay, we are already investing, investing in Kanban. We are looking at what to do about it. And David was very enthusiastic, and we said, okay, we need to work together. And so that was the beginning of Swift Kanban.
Awesome. Wow, that's a great story. It's fun to see how you just stumble into these things, by chance. So yeah, that's great. So, I know a little bit about Swift Kanban, but some people here in this session may not know what it's about. They may even have some questions. So folks, as we get going here, feel free to ask some questions as Mahesh shares some things about what Swift Kanban can do. But I was going to ask you, Mahesh, what are some of the main features that you think Swift Kanban has to offer for organizations?
Although I have got a few slides that I will share towards the end of the presentation on that. But I would say there are different things that Swift Kanban offers to different levels of maturity of the organization and their implementation of Kanban. So I think at the beginning, it is really all about visualization. And people are working with all kinds of tools. Most likely it's a spreadsheet or some basic project management tool. And from there to suddenly move into a very visual world of the Kanban board is itself a fantastic new journey of discovery for them. So the very first thing that most customers do is set up their Kanban boards. And I think Swift Kanban provides some great capabilities in terms of visualizing your exact process. So we've always been a very swim lane driven design. So boards can have individual swim lanes. Each swim lane can have its own workflow, something that you'd expect any Kanban tool to have. But surprisingly, many of the most popular tools don't let you do that, right? You have multiple lanes, but each of them has exactly the same value stream. Whereas Swift Kanban and a couple of others, of course, provide a better capability to do so. So starting from that level of pure and simple visualization of the process and the work, we then go on to standard sort of set of policies like WIP limits. We provide for both minimum and maximum WIP limits. We allow visualization of different colors for class of service, for different types of work, for priority of work, and so on. So these are the sort of next level of things that teams do. And then from there, they go on to doing more advanced stuff like Upstream Kanban, Portfolio Kanban. And we have a great set of capabilities to help them sort of go up that journey as they start to become more mature about their use of the Kanban method.
Awesome. Yeah. And in fact, I see a lot of Kanban, people using Kanban in a way to kind of stabilize their delivery. And then there's sort of this focus around, hey, how do we get the demand piece worked out? Because the demand is unbalanced. So you kind of hinted at upstream and you hinted at portfolio, which is that kind of higher level view. So I'm kind of curious in light of that, you have organizations that are using your software, and you kind of hinted at this just now a little bit, but what are the three problems that you would say Swift Kanban really addresses for organizations when they're just getting started with Kanban? What makes it, easy to use Swift Kanban for these purposes? What's sort of the highlight there around solving a problem for the beginning audience?
Right. And I think one thing that is important is to understand that it is not just the tool, but it is also this sort of ecosystem around it. So I think there are two things that we've seen work really well. One is, of course, the ability to use the basic capabilities of the tool and be able to be up and running on the process on the Kanban board. But the other is that I think it really does require some level of internal championing of the Kanban method itself. So really, our customers who have been really successful are those where there's been a fairly good understanding of the method, or at least a strong champion who has driven the adoption of Kanban and the adoption of the Kanban tool. And then secondly, I think from our side, I've been very fortunate to work with large number of our customers in exactly the same kind of sort of initial guidance, advisory, not so much on the tool, but on the Kanban method itself. And I think that, along with just the key capabilities of the tool, has helped these companies stick with Kanban and stay the course, essentially, to really benefit from the Kanban method. And also, of course, the capabilities of the tool as well.
That's great. What are some of the benefits you might highlight from some of the companies that have been sticking with it?
Okay. So let's say, and again, different levels of organizations and the maturity, different levels of benefit. So some people just are completely blown away by the visualization. So for them, the benefit is, I think, a sense of achievement, that they're able to actually see their work. They're able to see where it is at any point in time and what have they been able to complete, right? So just the notion of seeing their work go from the left to right side of the board and the sense of completion, it gives them a great sense of achievement. And that itself gives a great productivity boost, if you will. The second is, I think the visualization, again, makes them think about their work in a little different way, right? So far, if you've been working with email or spreadsheet, it's not visible. Suddenly now everybody's seeing it, not only the team, but also the stakeholders, the people who are their customers, the people who are their leadership. They're now starting to take a greater amount of interest in what the teams are doing. And I think that, again, adds to a sense of purpose, as well as a greater amount of collaboration between within the team members, as well as across teams and their stakeholders. And the third is, of course, that as they start to go up the maturity curve, my biggest vote would be for the upstream processes. There are some have material on the intake process. A lot of our customers have intake processes which feed their delivery teams in terms of what kind of work needs to be done, and these typically are built on SharePoint or some internal environment that they have. Yeah. And slowly they start to move over these intake systems into their Kanban boards as an upstream Kanban board or an upstream set of columns, and start to address the issues that they have of prioritization, getting stakeholder agreement, just lining up the work that actually needs to be done at the right time. Those are all amazing, benefits that they get, because they start to think about it in the sort of conceptual framework of upstream Kanban. So they get a better understanding of how to frame the problem, and then they're able to address the problem much better.
Yeah. I've noticed a lot of organizations, like you were describing as Swift Kanban before it became Swift Kanban. A lot of what your effort was on the traditional waterfall approach. And I've noticed organizations that are trying to find their way out of that are struggling, at least in that intake process piece. They're used to doing intake in a very sort of batch-oriented or large quarterly kind of effort. So it's really cool to see that you got the upstream piece offered to people, so they can say, how do we break that down and smooth it out so it runs better? Awesome. So I'm kind of curious, you were just talking a little bit about the maturity curve, kind of talking about how organizations use this. What kind of organizations are using Swift Kanban? Is it just for startups? Is it, for other organizations of different types? What do you see in terms of your types of organizations?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, I think it's a mix of organizations. I would say 70% of our customers tend to be either software or IT organizations, and they might be either small companies, or they might be teams within a very large organization. Some of our biggest customers have thousands of users of Swift Kanban. And on the other end, we have customers who are 10 or 20 people, but still part of a bigger organization. So it really kind of varies over the kind of teams that are adopting Kanban. And the other thing is that we have probably about 10 to 20% of our users who are serious non-IT, tech software Kanban users. So they are either marketing or product design in an automotive setting, or HR, procurement, all kinds of different sort of business functions, which are very interesting to see because the typical flow that we have seen is Kanban getting adopted by the tech organization first, and then slowly starts to percolate into other functions. But there are a few customers where they come directly to say, I want to run my legal practice on Kanban, and therefore I want to adopt Kanban. So, but that's sort of the general mix. Hopefully that gives you an idea of the kind of customers we have. Our typical focus has been medium and large customers. That's just sort of the way that Digité has evolved. But we have a number of customers who come to the website, try out Swift Kanban, and we'll see on a regular basis people just buying a few licenses of Swift Kanban as well. So we do have the very small end as well. But our focus typically, and I fault ourselves for that, tends to be on the bigger deals, bigger customers.
Well, anything you can do to smooth out procurement with Kanban, I'm all for, Mahesh, just because I've experienced procurement before. I know the challenges there. So yeah, thanks for letting us know that you kind of hang around in the mid to large space. Speaking of that, you were talking about teams inside these mid to large companies, and teams are using Kanban a lot, which is great. But I've also noticed teams are using Scrum a good bit too, which is another kind of interesting way to manage your work. And what I was curious about is, if you're using Swift Kanban, can you start with Scrum, and can you do something beyond that to move into Kanban more? How does that work for typically a large company like you're talking about?
Yeah, again, a great question. And in fact, I have, I don't know if the audience would want to pitch in here. I have a sort of quick survey to ask all of you, at least those of you familiar with Swift Kanban, and which is whether we should call ourselves Swift Kanban or Swift. The funny thing is that most of our customers call us Swift, and a lot of people in the Kanban community call us Swift. They don't call us Swift Kanban. The fact is that we have had for the longest time, almost since inception, we've had support for the Scrum process. So we provide for release and sprint planning. We provide for the related metrics, burn down charts, and so forth. And so if there's a Scrum team that's wanting to use Swift Kanban purely for Scrum, they can do so. If they're wanting to use Swift Kanban to adopt Kanban principles into their Scrum practices and improve from there, they can do so. And there is a sort of a complete spectrum of people in between there, right? Some people are very strong about continue to follow Scrum, and they continue to do so. And one of our earliest customers was a Israeli defense manufacturing company. They got on very early, and they remained with us for nearly 10 years. And I think they just kind of dropped off, and I'm not quite sure why they went away. But they use us only for Scrum and all for product development. Wow. And they told us, this is why I asked the question in the beginning. They said, you are underselling yourself by saying you're doing Scrumban. You're actually good at Scrum. So why don't you say that you guys are doing, which support Scrum as well? And it will help a lot of agile teams who are looking to do something different after having done 10 years of Scrum or whatever number of years they spent in agile, to sort of go to the next level using some of the Kanban principles. So we provide full support for Scrum, and you can call it Scrum or Scrumban or Kanban, whatever be the end state. You can certainly use Kanban for that.
That's awesome. That's exciting, because I think a lot of teams feel like they're kind of put into a box by compliance managers or whoever else around their organization might say, this is how you're supposed to do your process. And that sort of challenges what we do here at the Kanban method, because we're tending to focus on take a little bit of this, for example, like put in a WIP limit, or put in a policy, or change a policy, or in the middle of a daily planning meeting, simply erase a certain area of your board and say, no, continue on. So I think when you can offer those kinds of advantages to teams who are trying to learn and improve what they do, that's a big win here. Awesome.
Right. I should tell you, Joey, that we ourselves are a kind of a Scrumban team within Swift Kanban. So we have a regular release cadence of twice a month, and we tend to stick to that. We tried to. We were of course waterfall company before. We went the complete Kanban way, and we actually said as soon as we had 20 items, 20 cards done, we would make a release and we would update our production system. And then from there, we kind of came back to saying we needed a little bit better planning just because of the maturity of the team. We have a lot of new hires and so forth. So we need certain amount of discipline and planning. So we kind of went back to being more scrummish in our approach. In Swift Kanban, we use our release feature. So we plan our releases on a twice a month basis, and we work according to that. So we use it ourselves as well.
That's awesome. That's actually a really good short version of maturity, because I worked with low maturity teams before, and they have this sort of grab and go mindset where they just go, grab the next story, grab the next task, do it.
Right.
And then we're done. And then you let it build up and you say, what do we have? And we go, well, we're not quite sure we have the right thing after all. So there is this kind of interesting evolution that you can go through with the tools like you're talking about here. You can use that to kind of inform you, wait a minute, we're not in the right place. We probably want to change what we're doing a little bit. Yeah. Awesome. So one of the more popular tools out there that a lot of people are very familiar with these days is Atlassian Jira's tool, which is, it's very prominent, very common to see around in the environment. And it's one of those things that people love or do not love, depending on who they are. But I was curious, one of the things is that Jira sometimes becomes this source of record for performance in the organization. Do you guys do anything where you interact with Jira in some way so that they can have the freedom of what your tool offers while still reporting back to Jira? Is that possible?
Yeah, so we actually have multiple ways in which we do that, not only with Jira, but also with other products like Rally or version 1 or some of the newer tools. We integrate with something like 50, 60 odd tools where customers, depending on the way that they've implemented those tools, can decide how they want to use Swift Kanban as well, in order to get the benefits of monitoring flow, improving flow, looking at the flow metrics and so forth. And there are different customers who do it differently as well. The integration itself, the integration use cases are also slightly different. My personal view is, and I know this is not very popular with some of our people within Digité as well, is that I think it's a little bit of a hard thing to run in an integrated manner. So teams that are really interested in Kanban have to sort of make a choice that they should move away from Jira and get into a Swift Kanban or one of the more serious Kanban tools. You can work in an integrated manner, and it actually is very smooth in terms of the way that we support a two-way integration with Jira. So you can have work getting done in Swift Kanban, which updates Jira, or getting done in Jira and updates Swift Kanban. So there isn't any issue with integration, but I think it's a question of how easy do teams find it to work on two different tools, or how do they sort of divide their responsibilities so that they're effectively using both tools. And I'm not sure that that's sort of one of the best ways to do it. So I would personally recommend that people replace it, or if you are happy with Jira, just continue with Jira, because that's really the nature of the work.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Mahesh. Because I find
that I'm sorry, I joined. I do want to mention that we also have, I think you're aware of it, we have a tool called Swiftly, which is just the analytics capabilities of Swift Kanban, and Swift ESP, our enterprise services planning tool. And that obviously can work with the Jira or other tools. So if people want to simply use the flow metrics capabilities and the forecasting capabilities of Swift Kanban, they could potentially just use Swiftly on top of Jira. And we also, in fact, have a Swiftly plugin on the Atlassian marketplace. We haven't seen a lot of demand for it because I think people who are using Jira are not so focused, that's my belief, not as focused on the Kanban method as people who are using Swift Kanban or Kanbanize or one of the better tools, I would say. But it is there, and it has been used, but not as much as I think some of our people hope for.
Yeah, and it's tricky. I hear you, Mahesh. I've worked with teams that suggest we don't want to use another tool, but sometimes they want that other tool because they can't get the freedom that they need out of the current configuration in Jira. And that's one of the challenges I think anyone runs into with technology, is sort of the restrictions placed on them. So having that freedom of something like a Swift Kanban tool is pretty powerful. It's sometimes a compelling argument to say, yeah, we want to use this tool and have it connect with what we have to report back to. So that's great to know that you do those integrations. Out of curiosity, what does the future hold for you guys as far as the next steps, like the future for Swift Kanban? Where do you think you're going to go next as far as features, things you're going to offer people? Any ideas?
So one of the things that has happened since the time of the pandemic is that we have become far more, I would say, conscious of the way that individuals and teams are working. And it's hard to, I mean, we were always in a distributed world already, right? I mean, any company of any reasonable size already has multiple locations, multiple, countries even, etc. And so people were already working in a distributed manner. But I think the pandemic sort of made it even, accentuated it even further, where people are now working on their own and they're working with, very little interaction, or some interaction, but not as much as they would have in an office environment. And so we are slowly moving towards this sort of new mantra, new motto of humanizing work. And in fact, in the next couple of months, we're going to start to sort of launch some campaigns around how do you humanize work, where we really make it possible for teams and team members to relate to each other far more than they've been able to do so far. So I'd say that if there's one thing that we're doing, which is very different, it is that we're kind of moving away from a functional feature focus to more of a collaboration, sort of bringing the human behind the screen much more to the fore, to help them really relate to each other and to do things much better. So I think you'll see that most of our customers tell us that there are already enough features in Swift Kanban. So functionality-wise, we are well covered. In fact, a lot of people say you've got too much functionality. So we are really trying to do some things different in terms of how people come to the system. How do they see their overall work? How do they see the work that their team members or their peers are doing? How do they interact with each other in the context of not only their work but also their personal lives? If they are hiking or running or biking, can they share stories about that? Can they talk to each other outside of the context of their work? So we're going to do certain things around that. At the same time, of course, one of the key things that we continue to strive to do is to make things easier to use. So clearly, the fact that we have a lot of functionality makes for a certain amount of complexity in the system. We continue to try to chip away at that. We're also getting far more embedded with the collaboration systems of the world. So Zoom, Slack, Teams, etc. Those would become far more embedded, or rather, we would become more embedded in those ecosystems as well. And this is all sort of happen over the next maybe 6 to 9 months, let's say, starting with something that we will do immediately with some certain features within Swift Kanban itself, but certain things with the ecosystem of collaboration and networking with the wider set of teams or ecosystem that people work with.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Because I find that you talked about humanization and humanizing sort of the digital experience that people have on the interfaces. And I find that to be a big deal, is that the community element has been pulled away a bit because of the whole remote from home type work. So you don't have the happenstance conversations. You don't get a sense of the person's personality that much. You're missing out on maybe other kind of group conversations or community type activities that would normally take place alongside your work. So Absolutely. That's exciting. That's exciting to see.
Yeah. We are actually quite interested to see how it is absorbed in the market. So again, if people on the webinar want to sign up for an initial trial of some of these capabilities, I'd love to hear from you on that. Because this is going to be a sort of trial and error, experimentation, and then try to focus on things that really are working.
Awesome. And, something to mention here, I believe we'll have a link that we'll send out to attendees here for a free trial of Swift Kanban if they want to give it a go and check it out. So I'm kind of curious, we have a question from the audience here that probably is worth asking. So they were asking, does Swift Kanban integrate with something like GitLab? So they use GitLab for a lot of software development. Can they use it to actually manage releases through GitLab?
So GitLab is not available as an out-of-the-box integration, but we have done it for our own purposes. So we can certainly work with you to help you integrate with GitLab as well. It is not a connector that we currently offer in the market, but we use it. We use GitLab or Git internally ourselves. So we are quite familiar with the use cases. We have integrated that with our own instance of Swift Kanban. So we automatically capture, check-in comments and things like that on the cards, stuff like that. So I'm happy to get somebody to demonstrate the integration that we've done. And if there are specific needs, we can certainly work with you to see how we could potentially make it available to you. We are actually, this is something that we are also doing in addition to what I mentioned earlier. We are actually building out a completely new integration capability, a sort of a integration bus technology, which is going to be internal to Digité and Swift Kanban. That's going to take some time to roll out fully. But once that is rolled out, we will be in a better position to offer some of these more, I would say, ALM engineering tool related integrations in a far more effective and also in a speedier manner. So we may not be exactly in the place to do it right away, but we'll certainly get there by end of the year.
Awesome. That's exciting, because I know a lot of people have, like, I've come from a software development background, so a lot of software developers who use your tool are probably thinking, can I use my source control tool of choice and kind of keep that there and how I manage things there, and then have it speak back to Swift Kanban, so that way we can keep up to date with the rest of the team that needs to know what's going on. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, one other question for you. Is there anything I have not asked you that you would have liked me to have asked?
I think the one aspect of Kanban, which attracts, I think, all of us, is its evolutionary nature, right? We expect that teams will adopt and create that pull within the rest of the organization. But I think one of the most, not most, but I would say one of the more effective ways that we have seen Kanban succeed in organizations is also been when it has been a more top-down initiative. Mm-hmm. So when companies have taken something at a enterprise level, and one of our most successful customers is this company called Luiza Labs, which is a Brazil-based retail organization. It's probably the largest retail organization now. It's called Magazine Luiza, and Luiza Labs is the technology arm of the company. They had implemented a lean Kanban initiative, or rather a lean initiative, throughout the organization 4 or 5 years before we went into the organization. And so the overall organization focus on a particular initiative, whatever that may be, whether it's lean or agile, whether it is digital transformation, but it drives a certain level of leadership buy-in right off the bat. And it also provides funding and coaching and training support to teams that really are interested. And in a way, it provides them the direction as to which way to sort of go in terms of adopting lean and agile. So if you were to ask me, what is the sort of most effective way to implement Kanban and Swift Kanban and tools like Swift Kanban, I would say that while bottom-up has certainly worked for us, and in fact, surprisingly for some of our largest customers, it has been a bottom-up journey, but it's been a very slow and gradual journey, which is very different from the top-down journey. We've seen the top-down guys succeed far faster, simply because the entire organization is already sort of keyed into that, and therefore, in that respect, the support for Portfolio Kanban, the ability to model strategy and map it to execution, whether it is using OKRs or just standard portfolio management principles, defining initiatives, programs, and then actual teams that teams do. All of that capability built into the system again helps them to further propagate what they've already adopted in terms of processes, automate that through the tools that they use. So Swift Kanban is really good, and in fact, I have a quote from the senior director of product at that company, Luiza Labs, who said that during the pandemic, this company, which was a completely physical retail company, they almost overnight, within 6 to 9 months, they became a completely virtual e-commerce company, and they still remain the biggest in the country. They were able to do so simply because they had already set up their portfolio OKRs and the strategic initiatives, and all of that in Swift Kanban, and using Kanban as a way to manage them, because they had complete visibility to what their teams were doing, how they needed to pivot, what teams had to reprioritize their work, etc. That entire visibility and the alignment, the culture of alignment that was already there, it truly helped them sort of become a completely different and a more sort of modern organization, more virtual organization, and continue without taking a break from their growth journey as well.
That's nuts. That's amazing, honestly,
right.
To see that you can say, because that's the power of having someone at the top say, let's do this, let's work in this direction, and use the evolutionary methodology to try and really improve what we're doing here. So that's really impressive to see that that could cascade down so quickly. And you can see the transformation, which is kind of the traditional word used, but really I think of it as evolution. But you can see that take place so quickly where they keep doing what they're doing and actually get a little bit better at it while using these great tools. You know,
Right.
Mahesh, when you were talking about this, the one thought that kind of popped in my head was the bottom-up approach means the team's focusing a lot better using something like a visualization tool like Swift Kanban, but the rest of the organization may not be as focused in their own ways. And if you do a top-down approach, you actually have a lot more focus as sort of the key thing getting communicated across, saying focus more here, do better here, versus, you know, try and put out this fire and try and put out that fire. So
Absolutely.
really cool. Yeah.
Absolutely. The support from the leadership which comes in. I mean, I'll again give the example of United Health Group, which is our largest customer in the US. They're the guy who initially championed the implementation of Swift Kanban and Kanban said something that was, at least at that time, this is 4 or 5 years back, completely amazing for us. That he said that because of implementing Kanban and facilitated by Swift Kanban, our entire technology teams, they use it for all of their healthcare product development. They were able to free up their time from the routine and the mundane and automate that through using technologies and processes like DevOps and visual value stream management, etc. And therefore, we're able to free up their time for the more innovative and more creative. And they thanked both the Kanban method as well as the Swift Kanban product for really helping them do that. And I thought that was just an amazing endorsement for both the method and the tool. So, like you said, it really helped focus teams on a common sort of journey, common goal, and it just therefore aligns everybody's efforts in a far more synergistic manner than if that were not the case.
Yeah. I tend to find when I first got into Kanban, it was my excitement was around, hey, I have less overhead, I have less managerial burden on me to keep track on what's going on and to actually understand what's taking place. And that means I have more time to work with my team to help them improve what they're doing and get more creative. So yeah, that's awesome. Across a large organization like that, that's a big change, a big improvement for sure.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So one of the questions kind of popped in here that I wanted to slightly change. It came from a user, Leandro, which is a good question, but I want to kind of take it a little step further. And it has to do with SAFe, the Scale and Agile framework. So I'm kind of curious, just like with the Scrum question, do we have examples of Swift Kanban being used for SAFe? And are there examples where you say they've been using SAFe, but now they're using more of Kanban inside SAFe to kind of help them along the way? Has that happened yet for you guys?
So it has happened in multiple ways, actually. So we actually have a separate tool which we call Swift Ease, where the Ease stands for Enterprise Agility with SAFe. That's our wordplay on using SAFe in the branding. So Swift Ease is actually a sort of a special SKU built on top of Swift Kanban. So it completely leverages the foundations of the Swift Kanban features and the Kanban method principles, and provides that in the SAFe framework where there is a prepackaged sort of hierarchies which map to the different levels of SAFe. And so we have customers using Swifties, and we have got customers who are using Swift Kanban, both for just regular Kanban as well as, and I hate to say the word regular Kanban because obviously that's a poor way of putting it, scale Kanban, if you will, but also for mapping it to their version of SAFe. So there are lots of companies that are, I think, implementing SAFe, but not exactly the SAFe principles. They change up terminology and so on and so forth. So they've used Swift Kanban for implementing, the different levels of SAFe, and then managing their entire planning processes, the PI planning and the sprint planning, etc. We don't, obviously Swift Kanban doesn't possibly have some of the features that a SAFe team might need, but those are available in the Swifties product. And again, we are trying to consolidate that experience better, and we will make certain announcements probably by end of the year or early next year. Actually, it might take more time, where this will become more unified. And therefore, whether you're doing Scrum or Kanban or SAFe or other scale methods, we'll actually support other scale methods as well. They would be able to use Swift Kanban for doing that.
Awesome. Yeah, because I find that some organizations that are using SAFe get a little smell of what Kanban is. They start to discover the Kanban method, and they realize there may be a little bit more that they can utilize out of the tool set, so to speak. So that's really good. I'm really happy for you guys. you got a lot to offer people. You can cover Scrum, you can cover Safe, and most importantly, you can cover Kanban. So I know you've been a great partner with us, and we're excited to see where you go. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we wrap up here?
I just want to again talk a little bit about what what I was talking about earlier, which is the upstream and the portfolio Kanban. I think for those of the people who are in the audience who either are new to Kanban or would like to know what sort of helps Kanban and the tools succeed in a company, I think these two areas play a tremendous amount of role in helping teams and helping organizations sort of coalesce around the sort of notion of managing problems at on the overall system level, right? So Kanban talks a lot about systems thinking and the system thinking approach towards solving problems. And unless teams focus on collaborating with their stakeholders and their downstream customers or other functions in the organization, they're not going to succeed as much as they would if they collaborated. And I think the focus on upstream Kanban at every level, at every point, helps them really do that. Take that effort and set policies that simple things like what are the commitment points, what are the WIP limits that and capacity that each stage of the overall system has. And I think therefore, and I've presented this in other conferences as well. Organizations that focus their implementation of Kanban with some effort towards streamlining the upstream processes and then implementing them in the team as well, in the tool as well. I think they have had a far longer lasting success with Kanban, as well as I think deeper benefits with Kanban. And I think that's one key takeaway that I have sort of taken in the last 3 or 4 years of working closely with some of our most successful customers and teams that have been really happy with Kanban. And you see this, I sit on weekly meetings with some of our key customers. They call it Kanban office hours. And it's just amazing to hear how their lives are transformed, with Kanban. And I gave you that DevOps example, how they freed up time for creativity. There are many such examples, especially recent examples where because of COVID, people had to really regroup, and they lost capacity because people got laid off or had to be, redeployed, if you will. And their entire systems and processes had to change. And they used Kanban, they used principles of static, they used flight levels, and all of those principles to really reorient their organization, to redeploy capacity, to work better at getting a greater understanding with their stakeholders on how to prioritize in the new world, how to estimate in the new world. So there is an example that is shared by, you would probably know, Humanip. He works at AutoTrader, I think, and he presented this with the Squirrel North team, and he talked about how the new context of the organization completely threw away their estimation methods. So they had to reorganize and they sort of rethink of how do they estimate work so that they can do it with the new set of capacity, new set of people that they had. And so Kanban really, again, thinking about it in the framework of the Kanban method, but specifically in upstream Kanban and portfolio Kanban, I think that really helps teams to get the deeper meaning of what organizational value it offers. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize. I think, again, it goes to how you have invested in lean and Kanban principles, and therefore the training and the coaching that goes along with it. So having a great coach, having a great team that is responsible for spreading the knowledge in the wider organization, those are all core to how you implement these change initiatives successfully. And it's not too different, I guess, from earlier change initiatives as well. But I think Kanban in particular has a great potential for far more enthusiastic adoption and participation, just by the nature of the way that it sort of impacts teams in the way that they do their work.
Yeah, and you just highlighted the sort of the longevity of a Kanban initiative, and that it can continue to evolve and grow out beyond the delivery team into the upstream. And I'm usually called in to help out with things that are on fire. So in the Kanban maturity world, we call that ML0, which means they're kind of chaotic and kind of crazy. And they're just like, oh my God, this thing's on fire now, please help us out. And the job is to kind of settle the problem area down and get it to run normally. And I often joke to people that I say, hey, if you got that running well, then look left. And by looking left, you're looking upstream, right? So typically we say go right to left. And when you look at a Kanban board, because you want to say, what have we finished yet? What can we do to get that done? And then you go a little bit further left to say, what's coming down the pipe that we want to handle? So it's really cool to see that you've gotten examples in your field with what you're doing with your tool to show that if you actually work on managing that upstream, you get even bigger benefit, even bigger value out of it, because you're no longer just simply running around kind of on things that you thought were good. I find a lot of organizations accidentally step into speculation where they say, hey, this is something we want to do. And everyone thinks, yeah, we're going to do this. And they start to build it even. And then they realize, oh no, that was not what we needed. So the more they can do that upstream work to really say, is this really necessary? Is it really valuable? It's a huge deal. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think partly that comes from the fact that I myself have been in product management and I've been a product owner. So I have a lot of sympathy for the people who are in that profession and how challenging their job is to, herd the cats and get, agreement on what needs to be done. So I find Kanban invaluable in that. And, I'm really grateful for that in my own personal life in terms of how it has brought order to chaos.
Yeah. And, something that's really big in the product management space, like you mentioned earlier, is the idea of running experiments to validate your problems, to say, is this really a problem that you want to pay us money for to solve? So is that something that, in the upstream of Swift Kanban, is that something where you've played with that and you have some experience describing kind of how that looks?
We don't have any specific features, so to speak, but just the way that the board gets modeled. So we ourselves have an upstream board, which is separate from the main, the dev board. We also have features within Swift Kanban whereby in the same board you can designate columns as upstream columns of an overall value stream. In the way that we have done it is really more of a work organization and a team organization where we have defined specific MVPs or experiments and taken it out to a limited set of customers and showed it to them. We've really moved in the last 3 to 4 years to demo our work in progress to our customers and get their feedback in early stages. So things like that. I don't know that I've seen anything more than that yet. Of course, in our own product as well as in our website, we do a lot of A/B testing of features, and we try to see which one works better than the other. Those are the kind of things that I can sort of refer to.
Awesome. Yeah, and a lot of organizations, all they need to do is track a card on the upstream and say that card represents this experiment or that idea or this test that we're running to see if it really is validated before we put it into the overall platform. So that's really cool. Awesome. Anything else to add, Mahesh, before we wrap up today?
Not really. I know you mentioned a link, but we had a special offer for the people who attended today's webinar. And so what I'll do is I will send you that link. I'll send it to the Kanban University folks. And if you could share that, then they get an extended trial of the product. So they get slightly longer to kind of try things out and see if they like it.
Awesome.
So I'll send out the link after the webinar. But thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for the amazing partnership that we've had for now nearly a decade. Actually, more than a decade. We've had some amazing support, some fantastic feedback, and a fair bit of criticism on some of the things that we've done in the past, and that's helped us improve on a continuous basis in terms of what we offer to our customers. And ultimately, the validation of it comes from the customers that we have and the kind of ideas that they give us. It has made it all the worth to be doing what we're doing. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Mahesh, for being such a good partner here and helping us out and building a really amazing tool that people can use. So I'm excited for everyone to get this link. They can give it a try and see for themselves how it works. And again, it's a really robust tool. I've used it before. We use it here at Kanban University. So I can tell you it's going to be nice and fun to work with. And I hope you enjoy it. And again, for those who are attending, we're going to keep this series going on. We'll have another webinar in about a month, and that'll be another partner of ours that has a really interesting tool that integrates with Jira for visualization purposes. So we'll have more to share on that when time comes. And until then, everyone keeps flowing.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. And thanks for joining the webinar. Thanks, Joey.
Thank you. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.